Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Kimberley webinar with Coral Expeditions. My name is Will. I'm a member of the Coral Expeditions sales team. I'm based down in sunny, if not slightly frigid, Brisbane. And today I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of our classic Kimberley cruise itineraries. Coral Expeditions have been in business now for more than 40 years. For 35 of those years, we've been cruising the really remote kind of wilderness waters of the Kimberley. We pioneered expedition cruising in the Kimberley. And whilst a little bit biased, no one does it better, but certainly no one does it, has the levels of experience and expertise that we offer in the Kimberley. So we invite you to explore the Kimberley the Australian way. Coral Expeditions are 100% Australian owned. We cruise under the Australian flag, and we have an almost exclusively Australian crew, admittedly with a scattering of Kiwis amongst them. And we provide that informal and relaxed, highly experienced, full and true Kimberley expedition with that kind of Australian flavour. To kick things off, I'm just going to give you a bit of a brief video that shows you a little bit about this absolutely stunning area. So enjoy, and we'll chat shortly.
Pristine, isolated, untouched. It's wild up here.
Kimberley to me is far more than I expected. Almost like another world.
I've never seen anything like it, and it's here in Australia.
The scenery, the art, it's just been an amazing experience.
There's nothing like seeing it in person.
You just get this sense of time and space and colour. It's a very special, almost spiritual experience.
That's the kind of thing that I like sharing to the guests, the indigenous side of things.
There's so much change and there's so much beauty.
It's almost like cruising into a nature documentary.
Getting into the adventure, getting into the sense of excitement. It's absolutely beautiful here.
The Kimberley is just a fantastic place to be.
You'll enjoy every single moment of it.
So that was just a little snapshot of a Channel 10 documentary. We hosted Channel 10 on board one of our ships this time last year. If you'd like to see the full documentary, I'm not going to play it for you today, as we'd be here for far too long. But if you'd like to see it, you can find it on our YouTube site, the Coral Expeditions YouTube, or direct off our website. So feel free to have a little watch, and it gives you a really kind of in-depth view of who we are and what we offer in the Kimberley. So as mentioned, Coral Expeditions was founded more than 4 decades ago. We're actually in our 41st year of consecutive operations. 35 of those years in the Kimberley, and no one has the experience and expertise that we offer in the Kimberley. And that's crucial to allow us to kind of take you into the right place at the right time. And that is particularly crucial in the Kimberley, that is absolutely dominated by the second highest tidal range on the planet, I believe, with tidal ranges in excess of 12 meters. So if we turn up at horizontal falls at the wrong time of the tidal day, it's not going to be that raging torrent of water that all of us kind of expect and want to view. It's just going to be a slack body of water. We turn up at Montgomery Reef at the wrong time of day, and it just doesn't exist. It's completely underwater. So it's all about utilizing those 35 years of consecutive cruising in the Kimberley to get you into the right place at the right time to view the Kimberley and in all its kind of magnificent glory. And we also spend more time on excursions. So we offer a standard 2 excursions daily, and that's more than any other Kimberley operator, with a maximum of 18 excursions, both ashore and on board our Zodiacs and Explorer tenders, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail shortly. So it's all about maximising the time actually experiencing the place that, let's be honest, you've spent a considerable amount of money to experience. And we do this in true expedition style, small groups and no waiting. And so we can on and off board our entire ship's complement in under 15 minutes. And we do this utilizing our unique explorer tenders, which again, I'm going to come on to in far more detail shortly. You can see our explorers off the back end of one of our ships on the screen there. And we absolutely, we can lower these both in and out of the water. Each of our explorer tenders and our larger ships have 2 explorers. They fit a capacity maximum of 72 each. And it means we can, on and off board our entire ship's complement in under 15 minutes. So there's no waiting time. So it's a very, very different prospect from some of the big ship cruise lines out there where you have your allocated shore excursion time. So what is the guest experience on board? So as I've mentioned, we're 100% Australian owned. We sail under the Australian flag, and we have an almost exclusively Australian crew with the sprinkling of New Zealanders amongst them. And we offer a warm and relaxed style of Australian hospitality. There's no assigned seating, there's no dressing for dinner, and we encourage an open interaction between our guests and crew. I recently returned a few weeks or so ago from experiencing the Kimberley myself, and take it from me, the onboard experience and the interactions with the crew is an absolute highlight of Coral Expeditions, be that in the Kimberley, be that any of our domestic and international itineraries. Like any holiday, be that cruising or land-based, the food and wine experience is absolutely key to having a fantastic time. The food is magnificent on board. It's an all-inclusive experience. Breakfast, we have hot and cold options. We have freshly made patisseries each and every morning. Lunch is again hot and cold options, and then dinner tends to be a more a la carte affair with a multitude of options to choose from. We've got both in and outdoor bar and dining areas, and so again, subject to the weather, which when you're in the Kimberley at this time of year, it's usually absolutely stunning, fantastic weather conditions. You have the option of dining outside or enjoying that cheeky gin and tonic or glass of wine and watching those stunning vistas drift past. We also have some signature events as we go through the cruise. This is probably my most favorite. It's Veranda Beach, and we have a beautiful sundowner drink signature event. So you'll come back from an excursion back to the mothership. We give you obviously time to have a shower and a relax, and then you board our explorer tenders again, and we go round the headland, and then you'll see before you it's all been pre-laid up and built, for lack of better terminology, and it's a beautiful experience. We spend a couple of hours drinking a beautiful glass of champagne or gin and tonic or whatever your choice of poison, basically, and it's a beautiful 2 hours just mingling with the crew and the captain, and then watching that sun come down before we return back to the mothership for again another beautiful meal on board the ship. We've got a lovely barbecue event on the ship, which is another one of our signature events on our kind of classic Kimberley cruise itinerary. We take out the whole of our big vista deck, or one of the big kind of outside vista deck areas on the ship, and we have a beautiful barbecue, again moored in an absolutely fantastic location as the sun comes down. So it's a real highlight of the trip, and yet one of our signature events. So we have expert guides on all of our vessels and all of our expedition cruise itineraries, not just in the Kimberley. If you've cruised with us previously, you might know Ian Morris, the gentleman on the left of your screen. He's been one of our Kimberley guest lecturers for longer than 25 years now, and I've got a beautiful little video coming up shortly which kind of summarizes his journey and also his adopted son's journey, Goima Gondara, an indigenous guy who's kind of grown up with coral expeditions and has become one of our most popular kind of guest lecturers and expedition team on board as well. But we don't outsource any of our shore excursions at all in our Kimberley cruise. All of our shore excursions are accompanied by our expert guides, and they're on hand to kind of answer any questions you may have and provide that real kind of immersive experience, both ashore, but also when we're kind of cruising the creeks, rivers, and coasts of the Kimberley. So we don't really offer any kind of formal onboard entertainment outside of our full schedule of lectures and presentations from our onboard guest lecturers. And these guest lecturers are separate to our expedition team, and they are chosen for specific local knowledge and obviously specific to the areas in which we cruise. So they might be experts on the kind of history, cultures, geologies, flora and fauna of the various places in which we cruise. And with the aim being that we can, forearm you prior to turning up to a particular, indigenous rock art site or a particular spectacular area of geology, which is, the Kimberley is absolutely one of the best places in the world to see absolutely kind of stunning geological formations. And the aim being that we can kind of share in the expert knowledge of our expedition crew and guest lecturers and learn along the way. So prior to turning up to these spectacular sites, you've got the kind of information you require to really kind of get the most out of each of our shore excursions each and every day. So I've just got another little brief video to play you here. This just summarizes and focuses on Ian Morris, the guest lecturer I just mentioned, and his son. And it's a beautiful story that is well known in the coral family. So enjoy.
You come back on board, and if you didn't have a talk beforehand, it's explained to you. That's been amazing. And to have a guest lecturer, an Indigenous guest lecturer, is wonderful.
If you find a paperbark tree, it stores a lot of water, fresh water.
Goimer's been wonderful with all his knowledge.
So for us, it's about interpreting, through storytelling and demonstrations and workshops and just getting the full experience.
One of the other amazing things about having Goimer on board is that he'll pick up some sticks and leaves and make it into a traditional medicine.
When you're feeling sick, very sick, this is what we used to do. Stringing bark. This thing is very powerful, bush medicine. Cutting it. So once the Micasins came from Indonesia, they brought this yiki. We call this yiki knife. Not only knife, tobacco, and many other things. So they were like our guys from Bunnings.
He's got such a wonderful personality. He's great.
Sitting through some of their onboard presentations, you're so much more attuned the next day when you go into a region, and it just really adds to the experience when you're out on an excursion.
So I worked with the coral expedition through adopted father of mine, whose name is Ian Morris. Ian kind of became adopted by my grandparents, and my grandfather was Ian's mentor.
In order to learn Indigenous science up there, I had to be good at language. I began learning the Indigenous languages very young. Then the old men could talk to you and tell you all the fine details. They didn't know how to say it in English. And that's what happened in Australia. English dominated, and it meant that Indigenous people weren't able to express all the fine details that they had. And it's very sad because the price we had to pay for that sort of linguistic ignorance was we lost all the knowledge that they had accumulated over 65,000 years of managing this land. It was the key to the whole environment. And it sort of stopped with language. So I was really keen to learn that stuff, their language and their science. And I was in heaven.
So that's how I got to know Ian, and that's how I got to learn from him as well.
So it's an absolutely beautiful story, and if you're lucky enough to jump on one of our Kimberley cruises that has Goimer or Ian as one of your guest lecturers, you're going to be absolutely blown away by their knowledge and just genuine passion for this spectacular region. So moving swiftly on to the fleet. I'm not going to go into too much detail today on the 3 ships that make up the Coral Expeditions fleet. Please jump onto our genuinely excellent website where we can give you a full overview of the ships, deck layouts, lots of images and videos. So please peruse to your heart's content. But in short, our 3 ships that make up the Coral Expeditions fleet, are purpose-built to sail in the Kimberley waters. It's absolutely at the core of what Coral Expeditions do. And between April and late September, early October, all 3 ships in the Coral Expeditions fleet are present in the Kimberley. And it means that we can offer more than 50 departures each and every year between Darwin and Broome. So Coral Discoverer, she's our smallest vessel, and it's kind of like a yacht-like experience. She has a maximum capacity of 72 passengers on board across 36 staterooms. And then what is common across the Coral fleet, and again, all you really need to know at this stage is all of our cabins are outward facing. So at a bare minimum, they come with a porthole or a couple of porthole windows. But again, many of all of our ships have the opportunity to have private balconies and picture windows as well. So Coral Discoverer, really popular with our long-time guests, and it provides, that smaller, more intimate yacht-like experience with a maximum capacity of 72 passengers on board. Coral Adventurer and Coral Geographer are our 2 newest ships. So Coral Adventurer launched in late 2019 and Coral Geographer launched in late 2021. Our sister ships, and they're a little bit bigger with a maximum capacity of 120 passengers across 60 staterooms. Again, all of our cabins are outward facing, all are ensuite, and as you can see from the picture on the screen, many come with private balconies. So there is plenty of cabin opportunities, no matter your kind of personal requirements and budgets. I'm not going to go into any more detail on the fleet. Again, please jump onto our website and we'll give you loads of information and you can peruse to your heart's content. So I'm coming on to probably the most important aspect of how we deliver that kind of true small ship expedition on any of our Kimberley and all of our domestic and international itineraries. And if you take away anything from this presentation today, it's probably the next couple of slides. Our Explorer tenders are the perfect conduit between our motherships and the really kind of remote wilderness destinations, which is where we predominantly travel to. They're unique to Coral, and we have designed and built these ourselves, and no other operator in the Kimberley and beyond can offer anything similar. You can see on the screen some of the kind of key points of our Explorer tenders, but the couple that I'll highlight is one. They have a sunroof and occasionally, a rain roof for protection from the elements. And that might not sound like a big deal, but when you're out on excursion twice a day, and our excursions can last for anything from 2 to 3 hours at a time, imagine just sitting in the baking 40-degree or higher tropical heat for that long, and the enjoyment can quickly wane. So it protects you from the elements. We've also got a toilet on board, and again, that might not sound like a particularly big deal, but it completely stops us having to regularly run trips back and forth between the beautiful destinations we're visiting and the mothership to provide those kind of frequent toilet breaks. And in places like the Kimberley, having a quick dip in the ocean or finding that bush to nip behind is particularly inadvisable in the water. That is due to the ever-present risk of saltwater crocs and old marine stingers. So they provide, as mentioned, the perfect conduit between our motherships and these really remote destinations. Everywhere we go in the Kimberley, outside of our arrival and departure ports of Broome and Darwin, there's absolutely no sign of human habitation. There's no harbour facilities. So we do what are called wet and dry beach landings. So the image you can see on the top left-hand side of the screen is what we call a dry beach landing. And the Explorer tenders have a a kind of landing craft ramp which just drops down, and it means it's just a level walk, no steps or ladders to contend with, and then jumping onto the beach, and then away you go. For a wet landing, we're never going to drop you in water that's more than, you know, ankle deep, that type of thing. But it's advisable to bring a pair of you know, wet beach shoes, or like a lot of people, they just take their shoes and socks off and put them on when they're back at the beach. And we provide, as standard, you know, foot towels so you can dry your feet prior to heading away on excursion. I've mentioned the kind of on and off boarding procedure of Coral Expeditions in the kind of preamble to this presentation. The top right hand side of the screen is the boarding procedure. So the Explorer tenders are on a hydraulic platform. You can see on the bottom right hand side of the screen there. And we raise this up to one of our main deck levels. And so it's a level, flat walk straight onto the Explorer tender, no steps or ladders to contend with, before we gently lower you into the water, and then away you go on excursion. Again, for the boarding procedure, it's just the same, just in reverse. The Explorer tender pulls up to the back of the ship, the platform lifts us up to the main deck, and then away you go. And again, that is how we can kind of maximize your time ashore. It's a really simple and easy onboarding procedure. We can do it the entire ship's complement in under 15 minutes, which again means more time spent actually experiencing and enjoying these places that you paid to come and experience. That being said, on all of our trips, not just in the Kimberley, we pair up those unique Explorer tenders with the more traditional Zodiac inflatables. And it allows us to provide that true expedition experience, and allows you as our guest to pick and choose how adventurous or not that you want to be on a day-by-day basis. So moving to the crux of the presentation. The three itineraries that make up our Kimberley cruise series. So by far and away, in terms of numbers, the largest, or the classic experiences that we offer is the Kimberley cruise. It's 10 nights departing between Darwin and Broome and vice versa. It departs each and every year between April and September. And again, as mentioned, all three of our ships are present for the full Kimberley season. We also offer a slightly tweaked itinerary, and we call it the best of the Kimberley and the Tiwi Islands. Again, this is 10 nights between Darwin and Broome. It departs in August and September every year, and we use Coral Discoverer, our smaller maximum capacity 72 kind of yacht-like vessel for this particular itinerary. As you can see from the map, we still see all of the major Kimberley highlights, with the addition that we include a couple of nights spent in the Tiwi Islands just off Darwin. The Tiwis are a particular Indigenous art centre, basically. So if you've got an interest in Indigenous art, or you want to buy art, you know, direct from the artists themselves, then potentially consider this this particular itinerary aboard Coral Discoverer. And then our final itinerary, the Kimberley Icons, Ashmore and the Rowley Shoals. This is 12 nights between Darwin and Broome. Departs September each and every year, and we use our two newer and larger ships, Coral Geographer and Coral Adventurer, for this particular itinerary. Again, you can see most of the major Kimberley highlights are ticked off the list here. The major difference here is that we visit Rowley Shoals, Scott Reef and Ashmore Reef. And that the reason that we've included an additional couple of nights on this particular itinerary is just the time it takes to steam out pretty much into international water to Ashmore Reef and get back again. Ashmore and Scott Reef and the Rowley Shoals are one of the few places, if only places, that you can kind of snorkel and scuba dive. We're far enough out in the ocean that we don't have to worry about, you know, the ever-present threat closer to the coast of saltwater crocodiles. And they are a spectacular and really well preserved reef system. So if you like your scuba diving and you like your snorkeling and want to get into the water, then this might well be the itinerary for you, whilst also seeing many of the major Kimberley highlights as well. So without further ado, I'm not going to go through a detailed day-by-day itinerary. We would be here for far too long, and I try and keep these webinars to a pretty strict 45 minutes or so. But King George Falls, so if you're leaving from Darwin, this is your first major highlight of the trip, and it's an absolutely spectacular way to start your Kimberley experience. It's probably, well, certainly the highest waterfall that we see on the Kimberley Classic cruise itineraries. And as you can see from the image, it's a spectacular twin waterfall, which if you're going, particularly at the beginning of the season, is absolutely pumping, a massive torrent of water coming over it. We cruise down King George Gorge, basically. We use the Explorer tenders to cruise down there at high speed. Absolutely spectacularly beautiful journey. And then we transfer you into our Zodiac inflatables and get you really up close to the falls, depending on how much water is coming over. So early in the season, it's just so much water, so powerful that we can't actually get you under the falls. But once the flow has started to kind of subside, we nudge up right under the falls and we give you your first experience of what we call a Kimberley shower. And it's a beautiful experience, and you just go under the falls, and it's freezing cold as the water comes off the Kimberley plateau, but a fantastic way of starting your Kimberley expedition. Moving on to Vansittart Bay, and the first of our many opportunities to have a look at some of the spectacular kind of indigenous art of the Kimberley region. We've got multiple art sites that we visit. It depends again on the tidal or the tidal time of day, which particular art sites we go to. But Vansittart Bay, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there, is one of my personal favorites. And you can see from the image there, it's spectacular. You're accompanied by our expedition team and our guest lecturers as well, and they provide that far more detailed overview and insights into actually what you're seeing. In the afternoon is a completely different excursion. We go for a short walk, so it's only about 500 or 600 meters once we land off the Explorers onto one of the remote Kimberley beaches there. And it's a little walk to go and see the wreck of a Second World War C-53 plane that crashed. And it's an amazing survival story, which I won't give you any spoilers now. And again, our guest lecturers provide that in-depth story of a really quite extraordinary survival story related to the crash of the C-53 on the Anjou Peninsula there. Moving on to Mitchell Falls. This is the only optional activity in the entire classic kind of 10-night Kimberley expedition. I got the chance to do this when I was in the Kimberley a few weeks or so ago, and it's an absolutely spectacular experience. The helicopter comes and lands on one of these pristine beaches. Just the ship, the mothership will come and moor a few hundred meters away from the beach, and then you're taken to this beach by Zodiacs. The helicopter comes into land, and in groups of maximum 5 on board at any one time, you jump on board, and then you go for an approximately a 20-25 minute scenic flight right up onto the high kind of Kimberley plateau. And we land right next to Mitchell Falls, and it's a spectacular waterfall. This photo doesn't do it real justice. It's a multiple tiered fall that I just couldn't kind of get in one photo. You get around 45 minutes to an hour to explore the Kimberley Plateau and the Mitchell Falls area. There's a beautiful walk you can go on, depending on what time of day you're scheduled to head up there. We might give you a packed lunch if you're missing lunch on board the ship, and there's a chance to get in the water above the falls. We assure you it's 100% crocodile free, and it's a beautiful way just to cool off in the baking Kimberley sun. The helicopter then returns after about 45 minutes to an hour, and you have again a 20-25 minute beautiful scenic flight back to the same beach where you'll land, and then taken back to the ship. One other point I will mention is it's an open door or the doors are off kind of experience. So you're obviously all belted in, but we highly encourage you to put your camera over your head, that type of thing, because absolutely no doors are on board, but it really kind of adds to that beautiful experience and allows you to get some absolutely stunning photos and video footage. It's approximately, and it depends on how many people have signed up, but it's approximately 890 Australian dollars to do it. but in my opinion, worth every single penny. You don't have to pre-book this or make up your mind. We give you a little onboard presentation and safety briefing 24 hours prior to Mitchell Falls and this optional activity, and you can book and pay for it direct on board. So yeah, the Mitchell Falls optional heli flight, highly recommended. So Parosis Creek, again, is a real highlight of our classic 10-night Kimberley expedition. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the Kimberley is incredibly tidal dependent. And we wait until the tide is falling, and it exposes these mud flats that you can see on the screen. And there's an absolute myriad of creeks that branch off from this big river system. It's absolutely massive, you know, probably hundreds of square kilometers in size. And we basically jump on board our Explorer tenders, as you can see on the screen, but also utilize those Zodiac inflatables. So if you are wanting to jump on board those and cruise up some of those really kind of small, narrow creeks, you know, you have the option to do so. Parosis Creek is a fantastic place to see some of the bird life that the Kimberley is famous for, and obviously what most people come to see, some of those big saltwater crocs just basking on those you know, those mud blanks. It's a beautiful experience, and again, one of the true highlights of the classic Kimberley expedition. King's Cascade. What can I say about King's Cascade? One of my personal highlights of the entire trip. And I must point out that there are very few operators in the Kimberley that even head down to the King's Cascades, mostly because it's about a 45-minute high-speed journey on those Explorer tenders. Those Explorer tenders can get up to 25, 30 knots, and we're cruising in comfort. You're in a nice comfy seat, you've got a sunroof, you've got a toilet on board. And imagine doing that journey just on, you know, those traditional Zodiacs, which most of our kind of competitors use as well. It's just far too long to have you bouncing across the river system and with no protection from the elements. So one of the few people that see what is one of the true kind of highlights of the Kimberley King's Cascade. So again, we pull up in our Explorer tenders. Now, if you can see from the image on the screen there, we pull right up to the falls. We drop the kind of landing craft ramp down, and we provide you with your second opportunity to have what we call that Kimberley shower. So you can stand on the front, the water cascades over, and this is one of the few falls in the Kimberley that is spring fed, so it's flowing no matter the time of year, so we can always guarantee waters on King's Cascade. It's a really beautiful sight, and again, one of the highlights of the classic Kimberley expedition. So moving to Careening Bay and the famous mermaid tree. So Philip Parker King was one of the original, you know, explorers that really charted this. You know, he did a big circumnavigation of Australia, but really kind of charted the Kimberley region for the first time. He carved HMS Mermaid, which was the name of his ship, into the tree, and the date that he visited there. The tree is obviously grown and split in two. But again, I'll spare you the kind of in-depth explanation, but there's a fantastic story and history that, again, our expedition team and our guest lecturers will tell you about when we visit Careening Bay. And then moving on to Montgomery Reef, which for me was one of the true highlights of my own trip into the Kimberley. Montgomery Reef, or more commonly referred to as Monty Reef, is a reef that doesn't exist for large parts of the day. At high tide, it's completely underwater. And then as the tide drops, and as mentioned, we've got massive tides in the Kimberley, the water just cannot escape from this flat top reef. And it's about 400 square kilometers of flat top reef. You'll see a little white dot in the distance, which is one of our ships moored up there. So we turned up at the crack of dawn before the sun had risen. We board the Explorer tenders and we cruise down this main channel right into the heart of the reef. We then again have the option of either staying aboard the Explorer tenders if you want that bit of comfort, or jumping onto one of our Zodiac inflatables. And we spend a couple of hours just cruising through the myriad of waterways, watching the water, cascading off this flat top reef. The bird life is superb. We saw hundreds of sea turtles. I spotted a couple of sharks swimming around as well. So it's an absolutely spectacular site that will be one of the true highlights of your Kimberley expedition. And then moving on to horizontal falls. For many people, it's the one Kimberley highlight that they've all heard about. And let me tell you from personal experience that it's a highlight that just does not disappoint. Many of you might have heard in the press, in the media recently, that sadly the local Indigenous Council of the area are closing horizontal falls in 2027 to all tourism activities that actually go through. We're still going to be able to go to horizontal falls in Talbot Bay where we moor the ship. We'll still be able to get a kind of close-up look at it, but we're not going to be able to traverse through, which is a real shame. But if you're looking at traveling this year or next or into 2026, you're going to be one of the last people that gets the opportunity to cruise through horizontal falls. So we go and moor the ship in Talbot Bay, as I've mentioned, literally a few hundred meters away from what becomes a raging torrent of water. We wait for the optimal time, which is when this massive water's squeezing through these two gaps. And then we board our Zodiac inflatables, and we take you through multiple times, basically. And it's whitewater rafting, at its finest, basically, but whilst, having the kind of experience and safety of our kind of expedition team who have literally done this traverse through the falls thousands and thousands of times. We go through one of the wider falls, and then we take you up to the narrow gap at the other side of the bay. No commercial operator goes through the second gap, and you'll see why when we turn up there and nose into it to give you guys a chance to take some photos and videos. The massive water is just immense, and it would be far too dangerous to even attempt to cross it. So again, we're one of the few operators that still goes through the falls, and it's an absolute highlight of the trip. And what I will say as well, even some of our older demographic on the cruise that I was on recently, in their kind of late 80s, were able to do this expedition. This particular highlight. We lower the hydraulic platform down to sea level, and even the slightly older guests, or they might have dodgy hips or knees, are very well looked after and kind of carried and assisted to get into the Zodiacs, and then away you go. A fantastic experience, and I assure you, no matter what you kind of expect and have heard about horizontal falls, you will not be disappointed. So Nares Point, I put this particular slide into the presentation just because it highlights, one of the most kind of spectacular geological features of the Kimberley. The Kimberley is spectacular across all 10 nights, 10 days of the trip. The scenery just seems to get better and better as the days go by. Each morning, we tend to reposition the ship at night. So you will wake up each morning to another spectacular vista, towering cliffs. And yeah, I just can't exaggerate how spectacular the geology is. All of our guest lecturers on board are very well versed with the kind of various geological formations. This one is particularly spectacular, I believe, on the screen. And again, we have regular presentations and lectures focused on the kind of geology, so you can really kind of get the most out of some of these epic formations and rock formations that you see throughout the trip. But it will be absolutely a take-home point that the scenery and landscapes are the true hero of the Kimberley, and it's absolutely spectacular. So if we're departing departing Darwin and heading towards Broome, the Lassipede Islands are our last kind of major highlight of the trip. Geologically speaking, they're not particularly exciting. As you can see on the screen, they're flat. I think the highest point above sea level is only a handful of meters. what they are is an incredibly important marine bird nesting site. We again get up really early in the morning, again tidal dependent, jump onto our Explorer tenders and cruise and spend 2 or 3 hours cruising through the myriad of waterways of the Lassipedes. The bird life is absolutely spectacular. I saw on my particular trip in under 3 hours on excursion, probably in excess of 150 green sea turtles. We saw crocodiles here. I saw a couple of sharks, one of which was a hammerhead shark. And again, the bird life spectacular. And if you time it at this time of year where the bird colonies are entering their kind of peak breeding seasons, it's absolutely spectacular and a really amazing kind of last major highlight of our kind of classic 10-night Kimberley expedition. So moving towards the end of our presentation, as I'm very aware that I'm rapidly moving towards our kind of 45-minute window, many people ask me, what's the best time of year to visit the Kimberley? So the Kimberley season starts in early April. It goes on till late September, early October, and it's kind of divided into kind of 3 main segments basically. So April, May and June, it's what we call the waterfall season. So if any of you are really wanting to see the many waterfalls in the Kimberley and you want to see them at full throttle when they're absolutely pumping, we're coming off the back of the rainy season obviously in the top end, and all of this water hits the Kimberley plateau and just takes weeks to escape. You want to go as soon as you can early in the season. It's also when the Kimberley is at its most lush and green, or as lush and green as it's ever going to get. April, May and June, waterfall season. And then we move into kind of July, August, September and October. That's what we call the whale season, I suppose. It's when towards the latter half of the season that the whales turn up. You're still going to get the waterfalls. Many of them still have water flowing over them, but it's just not as spectacular as you get right at the early part of the season. But the payoff to that is the weather is at its finest. So the humidity has dropped, the peak temperatures have dropped, and you get the spectacular opportunity to see whales just breaching and coming up to calve and give birth to their young in the myriad of bays and coastlines that we visit. The middle of the season, we call it, peak season. It's when most of the Kimberley competition, other lines that cruise in the Kimberley are operating. But you get the best of both worlds, basically. The temperature and the humidity is pretty good. The waterfalls are still flowing to a certain extent. So it's really up to you kind of what your personal preferences are. Wildlife wise, you're going to see crocodiles. You can't guarantee them, but you're going to see crocodiles pretty much on every single trip, no matter the time of year and the seasons. The bird life is absolutely spectacular as well at any time of year. So it really comes down to personal preference. If you want waterfalls, head at the beginning of the season or as early as you can. But if you want, slightly lower temperatures, less humidity and spectacular whale sightings on top of all the other wildlife, maybe head towards the latter stages of the Kimberley season. So just to summarize, why you should choose Coral Expedition above any of the other, foreign lines that have come into the Kimberley over the last kind of couple of years. I mentioned we focus on the destination and not the ship itself. And that's a very different prospect from some of the kind of big ship cruise lines out there that visit the Kimberley occasionally. If you're looking for that kind of classic big ship experience with multiple restaurants, bars, nightclubs, casinos, white jacketed waiters, that's just not the kind of onboard experience that Coral Expeditions offer. If you want to spend more time ashore or on excursion and travel with the true experts in the Kimberley with 35 years of expedition experience, then absolutely travel with us. And we do this, like I say, with that true expedition ethos, maximizing your time ashore. There's no queuing or waiting. And we visit these, fragile environmental sites and indigenous rock art sites. And we do this with small guest numbers. So again, a maximum of 120 guests on board at any one time. And we can on and off board that entire ship's complement in under 15 minutes. So no queuing or waiting. We do it with warm Australian hospitality. So Australian flagged, Australian crew, and it gives you that informal kind of relaxed while still very, very premium kind of true blue Australian onboard experience. The Kimberley, as mentioned, is at the core of what we do. Half of our 8,000 guests that we take a year are into the Kimberley. All 3 of our ships are present for that full 5-month Kimberley season, and our ships have been purpose-built to sail in Kimberley waters and the tropical and subtropical waters, which is the kind of Coral Expedition sweet spot. The Explorer tenders that you can see on the screen there, absolutely unique to Coral Expeditions. We use those traditional Zodiac inflatables where it's going to be beneficial, but they provide the ability to provide that expedition experience while still maintaining that kind of level and comfort that our kind of clientele require. And it's the local expertise that's unrivaled. 35 years in the Kimberley and counting. No one has as much experience and expertise in the Kimberley. No one has as many departures between Broome and Darwin each and every year. It's an all-inclusive experience at all of your excursions, with the exception of that Mitchell Falls helicopter flight are included. Obviously, all your meals are included as well. And as mentioned, we're Australian owned, operated and flagged. So we provide that, classic Australian experience. So if you're looking to experience the very much a classic Australian kind of bucket list domestic travel experience, then come and cruise with Coral Expeditions. I've just got one more brief little video to play you now. If you've got any questions from this presentation, please take the time now to put these into your chat function on the computer. I might not get a chance to address them all, as I'm very aware that I'm going over the 45-minute allocated time, but I'll reach out to you all personally after this presentation. So enjoy, and we'll chat again shortly.
Coral Expeditions are the pioneers of Kimberley cruising. With over 30 years' experience, our local knowledge is unrivaled. Our small ships are designed to explore and connect, with fewer guests and more time ashore. Our local crew guide the way with Australian hospitality and pride. Join us on a classic Australian adventure. Cruise with the pioneers. Coral Expeditions.
Right, so thank you for joining me today. I've got a couple of questions which have been pre-submitted, and I'm already having a few popping through on the channel now. So look, I'm going to answer as many of these as I can, time dependent, but like I say, if I don't cover your particular question, I will reach out to you directly after this presentation. So firstly, best time to go. Well, hopefully I kind of covered that a couple of slides or so ago. If you're looking for those pumping, magnificent waterfalls flowing at peak rate, absolutely, the earlier you can jump into the Kimberley, the better. If you're looking for the whales and the breeding season, the calving season, and for slightly lower temperatures with less humidity, then come towards the second half of the season. Wildlife-wise, the wildlife is spectacular no matter what time of year you join us. How physical are the shore excursions? So we cater to a particular demographic at Coral Expeditions. Our average age or sweet spot certainly is in the kind of 50+ age range. We've got a median age in the kind of early 60s, so we kind of cater accordingly. Unlike some of our other domestic and international itineraries that have got quite some physical challenges and treks and walks, the Kimberley is not known for its physical challenges. Most of our walks are under a couple of kilometres. They tend to be flat. Sometimes when we're jumping up to some of those indigenous rock art sites, there might be a short, brief scramble over some of rocks and boulders to get up to those art sites. But again, on my particular trip, there was no one, even some of our older clientele, that missed out on any of our activities. And we also kind of cater to all. So if you aren't willing or able to join us on one of our shore excursions, we will always offer you the opportunity to stay aboard our Comfort Explorers or our Zodiacs, and you'll get a little private guided tour as we go for a little private cruise along the creeks, rivers and coastlines to watch that, to experience the, spectacular vistas of the Kimberley. So there's always going to be kind of an option that's going to fit no matter kind of your own physical requirements. Can you swim? I get asked this pretty much every presentation. So again, unlike many of our itineraries, domestic and international, where getting in and under the water is a practically daily occurrence, that's not the case on our classic Kimberley itineraries. And that's mostly for the previously mentioned ever-present threat of saltwater crocodiles and marine stingers. So there are a couple of opportunities like the Mitchell Falls heli flight, where you get 45 minutes or so to have a quick dip above the falls there. And again, depending on the time of day in the tidal scheme of things, there might be a couple of pools above the various waterfalls that we can kind of drop into and have a swim, but it really kind of depends on the conditions on a particular day. If you want to experience the Kimberley and combine it with some snorkeling and scuba and having a jump into the water, then I would probably push you towards our Kimberley Icons, the 12-night itinerary, where we go further out into international waters to Rowley Shoals and Scotty Reef, where we're far enough out that we don't have to worry about those saltwater crocs. But no, swimming is not a particular feature of our classic Kimberley itineraries because, yeah, saltwater crocodiles are all over the Kimberley. What is better, departing from Broome or Darwin? And I think segueing into that, what side of ship is the best, port or starboard, when you're booking your cabin? Well, first of all, the itinerary is identical whether or not you're departing from Broome or Darwin. So it really doesn't matter where you join and depart the ship. It's very much personal taste and where you want to fly into, basically. Which side of the ship is best? And again, most people, if you're starting the trip in Darwin, for example, they want to book a cabin on the port side, so they get that the full vistas as you cruise down to Broome. I must say that it makes absolutely no difference. Whilst on the map it might look like it's a straight line from Darwin to Broome, but in reality, the Kimberley is made up of literally thousands of rocky islets and islands and peninsulas, and the ship is constantly changing direction. So even if you book a starboard side cabin, you're going to get as much, epic views and vistas as you enjoy your private balconies or picture windows as people that are booked on the port side. Don't get me wrong, when you're picking up the phone or getting your travel agent to pick up the phone, you can still request a particular cabin, but it really doesn't matter on our Kimberley itineraries whether or not it's port or starboard. You're going to get epic views no matter what cabin you book. Wi-Fi on board, and I think this will be my final question. Again, I get asked this all the time. If you'd asked me about 12 months or so ago, I would say that our Wi-Fi was pretty terrible, basically, particularly in the more remote locations like the Kimberley. Over the last 12 months, or about 12 months or so ago, I should say, we invested a large amount of money, not that Elon Musk needs it, but installing his Wi-Fi Starlink technology across all 3 ships in the Coral Expeditions fleet. And our standard Wi-Fi package now comes included in the fare that you pay. Our standard Wi-Fi is going to be more than suitable to, keep in touch with friends and family, post some videos and photos, which we encourage you to do. But if you're one of those unlucky people like me, who was on board that had to jump in and join some important work meetings, or God forbid, you've got the time to download and stream Netflix movies, you might want to upgrade to our premium service, which does come at an additional cost. But the premium Wi-Fi is better than our head office Wi-Fi, on mainland Australia. So standard Wi-Fi comes included and is going to be more than enough for your day-to-day needs. There's still questions coming in now, guys, but what I'm going to do is conclude this presentation now, as I don't want to keep you too long. I will be reaching out to you direct to answer any queries that I haven't covered in today's presentation. Thank you very much for joining me today. I think a few of you joined a little bit late into this presentation, but don't worry about it. We record today's presentation, and over the next couple of days, we will send you that recording so you can watch to your heart's content. Please feel free to distribute far and wide to friends and family. And I hope I've given you just a bit of a brief overview of kind of who Coral are, kind of how we kind of differentiate ourselves from some of the competition in the Kimberley. and hopefully we get to see you on board soon, if not for this current 2024 season, which we're in the midst of, but certainly in 2025 and beyond. So thank you very much for joining us today, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.